In 1925, a 25-year-old engineer named Hideo Shima dared to imagine a train running at 130 miles per hour, slashing through Japan's mountainous heart, a vision so outlandish it earned the nickname Bullet Train. They said it was fantasy. Japan's terrain was impossible, the old guard laughed him off, and his dreams were nearly destroyed twice. Still, Shima planted the technical seed the world would chase for decades. But how did one disgraced outsider end up shaping the future of travel for billions, yet vanish from his own triumph stage? The answer lies at the true beginning of high-speed rail and the most overlooked rebellion in modern engineering. Hideo Shima entered the world in 1901 in Osaka, the son of a man who helped lay Japan's first rails. From the start, trains ran in his blood. By 1925, diploma in hand, he walked into the Ministry of Railways as a young engineer, eager but untested. Japan's landscape towered over him, mountains covering nearly 3/4 of the country, slicing the land into narrow corridors and steep grades. The old railwaymen called it a land for slow, winding trains. Shima saw something else. He pictured a train, not just faster but almost flying, 130 miles per hour. A silver bullet racing through tunnels and over valleys, connecting distant cities in hours instead of days. The idea sounded like fantasy. Colleagues called it Dangan Resha, the bullet train, half as a joke, half as an accusation. They said the mountains would break it, that no track could be built straight enough or strong enough. But Shima filled notebooks with sketches and calculations, chasing a vision that seemed to belong to another century. At just 25, he was already dreaming of a future that no one else could see, one where speed would shrink Japan and bring its people together. The obstacles were immense, but for Shima, the impossible was just an invitation. Steam engines thundered across Japan in the 1920s, each one a single iron horse dragging a line of cars behind. Hideo Shima, still in his 20s, spent his early years designing these locomotives, most famously the Class C-53. It was Japan's first 3-cylinder engine, a marvel of balance and power, but even then, Shima saw a flaw in the old approach. One locomotive, no matter how mighty, could only do so much. If it failed, the whole train stalled. If the load was too heavy, speed dropped to a crawl. Shima wanted something different. He started studying electric streetcars, which used motors under each car instead of relying on a single engine. The idea was simple: spread the power out and let every car do its share of the work. In engineering circles, it was called multiple unit control. For heavy freight, it meant more muscle and fewer breakdowns. But Shima saw something else, a way to make trains not just stronger, but faster and more stable at high speeds. With distributed power, acceleration could be smooth, and if one motor failed, the others kept going. No single point of failure, no wasted potential. Shima's early prototypes proved the concept. He adapted the Class C-53's design, experimenting with electric motors and control systems that let every car respond in perfect sync. The old guard at Japanese National Railways doubted it would ever work on a grand scale, but Shima kept refining the system, laying the groundwork for trains that could handle the sharp curves and steep grades of Japan's landscape. The seeds of high-speed rail had been planted, not with a single breakthrough, but with years of relentless tinkering, each improvement building on the last. For Shima, the dream was no longer just about speed. It was about reimagining the very way trains moved together. On the morning of May 8th, 1951, smoke poured through Yokohama Station. Flames tore through packed wooden train cars, trapping passengers inside. In the panic and confusion, more than 100 lives were lost before the fire could be brought under control. The investigation traced the cause to an electrical fault, but the public wanted someone to answer for the tragedy. Hideo Shima, then head of rolling stock at Japanese National Railways, was not to blame by any technical measure. Yet in keeping with the unspoken code of responsibility, he stepped down. His resignation was swift and final. No protest, no defense. The press recorded his departure, but for Shima, it was a private humiliation. At 50, with a career built on progress and vision, he found himself cast out. He took a post at Sumitomo Metal Industries, far from the world of trains. To outsiders, it looked like the end of an engineer's story. But in the quiet aftermath, Shima carried the weight of the disaster and the memory of what he still hoped to build. After the war, Japan's skies fell silent. American occupation authorities banned aircraft design, leaving thousands of engineers with no planes to build and no future in aviation. Among them were Tadanao Miki and Tadashi Matsudaira, both veterans of Japan's wartime aerospace labs, now adrift in a country desperate to rebuild. The Railway Technical Research Institute became their new home. Instead of wings, they studied wheels. Instead of dogfights, they tackled the riddle of speed on rails. Miki led wind tunnel experiments, measuring how air rushed over a train's nose at 200 kilometers an hour. Matsudaira brought experience from the Zero fighter, applying his knowledge of vibration and stability to train bogies and frames. The bullet-shaped nose of the Shinkansen, so radical at the time, owed its form to the lines of fighter planes and the math of airflow. Their work, born from defeat, gave Japan's trains the grace and efficiency of aircraft. These engineers didn't just adapt, they transformed the very idea of what a train could be. By the mid-1950s, their research equipped Japan with tools no other railway in the world possessed, quietly setting the stage for a comeback that would demand everything Hideo Shima still had to give. In 1955, Shinji Sogo took the helm at Japanese National Railways, a man with a reputation for bold moves and little patience for caution. He knew the country was running out of time. The Tokyo Olympics were less than a decade away, and the world would be watching. The old Tokaido line, clogged with trains and creaking under the weight of post-war recovery, could not keep up with Japan's ambitions. Sogo wanted something radical, a new rail line, 320 miles from Tokyo to Osaka, built almost entirely from scratch. It would have to be faster, straighter, and more advanced than anything that had come before. The deadline was fixed, October 1964. There would be no extensions, no second chances. Sogo needed an engineer who could turn this dream into steel and concrete. He turned to Hideo Shima, the man who had once been forced out in disgrace. Their first meeting was not about blueprints or budgets. Sogo simply asked if Shima believed it could be done. Shima, still carrying the scars of his resignation, said yes. That was enough. Sogo hired him back as chief engineer, giving him authority over a project that would stretch every resource Japan possessed. The risks were enormous. No country had ever attempted a high-speed rail line of this length, through terrain as unforgiving as Japan's. The cost would be staggering. Political opponents called the plan reckless, a fantasy that could bankrupt the railway and embarrass the nation. But Sogo staked his own career on Shima's vision, and Shima accepted the weight of a country's hopes on his shoulders. Letters and memos from the time show the urgency. Meetings ran late into the night, every delay scrutinized, every setback a potential disaster. The partnership between Sogo and Shima became the driving force behind the project, setting in motion an engineering marathon with the eyes of the world fixed on the finish line. Construction crews fanned out across the Tokaido corridor, facing a task that had never been attempted at such a scale. The route from Tokyo to Osaka was not just long, it was a maze of mountains, deep valleys, and crowded cities. To lay 320 miles of nearly straight track, engineers designed and built more than 3,000 bridges, some stretching across wide rivers, others spanning narrow gorges carved by centuries of rain. 67 tunnels pierced solid rock, the longest burrowing over 4 miles beneath the earth. Each obstacle forced new solutions, and every mile demanded invention. The old rails had always followed the land, winding and narrow, but Shima's team insisted on a wider standard gauge, 1,435 millimeters, unheard of in Japan at the time. This change allowed for greater stability at high speeds, but it meant every inch of track had to be laid fresh, with no shortcuts from the past. Power was another revolution. The Shinkansen would draw electricity at 25,000 volts, alternating current, delivered by a network of overhead wires running the entire length of the line. This system was borrowed from European experiments and pushed further, giving the train unmatched acceleration and reliability. Inside the cars, comfort became a kind of quiet engineering triumph. Air suspension systems smoothed the ride, absorbing the shocks of uneven ground and sudden curves. Air conditioning, still rare in public transport, kept passengers cool even in the humid Japanese summer. Every car was powered by its own electric motors, spreading force evenly and allowing speeds that had seemed impossible just a decade before. The technical ambition was staggering, and so was the pace. Schedules left little room for error. As the miles of track stretched out across the country, the cost of such ambition began to show, a warning that the engineering race was about to collide with financial reality. By 1963, the dream of the bullet train teetered on the edge of collapse. The original budget, 200 billion yen, was shattered. Costs soared as engineers pushed through 3,000 bridges and 67 tunnels, fighting mountains, rivers, and the unyielding deadline of the Tokyo Olympics. In the halls of the National Diet, politicians pounced. Hearings dragged on for hours, grilling railway officials over every yen spent. Headlines called it a scandal. Critics accused Hideo Shima of reckless ambition, blaming him for the runaway costs and warning the country could be bankrupted by a train that did not even exist yet. Under mounting pressure, both Shima and Shinji Sogo resigned. Their signatures appeared on resignation letters in 1963, just months before the project was completed. The men who had risked everything, reputation, career, and pride, were forced out, not for failure of vision, but for daring to attempt the impossible. For Shima, it was a second public humiliation. He had built the technical heart of the Shinkansen, but now his name became a byword for excess and scandal. On October 1st, 1964, the world watched as Emperor Hirohito pressed the button that launched the Shinkansen into service, 9 days before the Olympic torch was lit. Dignitaries, politicians, and foreign press filled the platforms. Shima's name was missing from the guest list. The man who had dreamed, designed, and delivered the bullet train was nowhere in the crowd. He listened to the celebrations from afar, his reputation so tarnished that the organizers left him off the invitation. The train that changed Japan forever sped toward Osaka, but the engineer who made it possible was left behind, erased from the moment he had spent a lifetime chasing. Trains began rolling out of Tokyo every few minutes, each one slicing hours off the old journey to Osaka. The trip that once dragged on for nearly 7 hours now finished in just 4. By the end of the first year, over 23 million people had ridden the Shinkansen. Today, that number stands at more than 6.4 billion, more passengers than there are people on Earth. Speed was not the only promise kept. Since 1964, not a single passenger has died in a collision or derailment on the bullet train. Delays, once measured in hours, are now counted in seconds. Across thousands of daily departures, the average train arrives less than a minute late. Over 280 bullet trains run between Tokyo and Osaka each day, a frequency and reliability that seemed impossible when Shima first put pencil to paper. The numbers told a story that no critic could deny. What began as a national scandal became a national treasure. The train that nearly ruined Shima's name rewrote his legacy in steel and speed. In 1969, the phone rang with an unexpected offer. Hideo Shima, now in his late 60s, was asked to lead Japan's new National Space Development Agency. The man who once dreamed of trains that sliced through mountains was now charged with launching rockets beyond the atmosphere. He threw himself into the work, championing hydrogen-powered engines and pushing for technologies that would carry satellites into orbit. The same restless mind that had mapped out the bullet train's path now charted new courses for Japan's space ambitions. After 8 years, Shima stepped down in 1977, leaving behind a program that would soon see its first domestically built satellites circle the Earth. Recognition finally followed. In 1994, the Emperor awarded him the Order of Cultural Merit, one of the nation's highest honors. He lived to age 96, passing away in 1998. It was a quiet end, but no longer an unsung one. His story, once defined by exile and scandal, closed with the respect he had never sought but always deserved. 17 years after the Shinkansen's first run, France launched the TGV in 1981, racing across the French countryside at speeds that stunned Europe. The TGV's streamlined nose and electric multiple-unit design drew directly from the lessons pioneered by Shima's team. Germany soon followed, introducing the ICE, Intercity Express, combining comfort, safety, and velocity for a new generation of travelers. Each system adapted the essentials: distributed power, dedicated tracks, and aerodynamic shaping, all first proven on the Tokaido line. Nowhere has the influence spread further than China. Over the past 2 decades, China has built the world's largest high-speed rail network, stretching more than 45,000 kilometers and connecting megacities at speeds up to 350 kilometers per hour. Chinese engineers studied the Shinkansen's core principles, then scaled them to a national grid. Today, bullet trains run from Shanghai to Beijing in under 5 hours. Every modern high-speed train, from Paris to Beijing, carries the DNA of Shima's original vision. What began as a dream in the mountains of Japan has become the blueprint for how the world moves. Every 2 seconds, a Shinkansen train departs somewhere in Japan, precise, silent, and on time. As cities worldwide race to build their own high-speed rail, Shima's vision shapes how billions move, connect, and imagine the future. Innovation often means standing alone, misunderstood, until the world catches up. The next leap forward may already be waiting for someone willing to pay its price. What do you think? Who dreams our next revolution?